center yet so far. Let me reconfirm it. When will it come?
Now.
Krishna Premarupa or Krishna Premarupa Dasa. Premarupa scena. Ska man sjunga?
Ja. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
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 Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari
Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhari
Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari
Jaya Gopi Jana
Yashodanandana Brajajanandana
Yashodanandana Brajajanandana
Yashodanandana Brajajanandana
Vishvabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishiki.
Hare Krishna, reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 23, Text 5. Kanda Mula Phala Hara.
Kanda Mula Phalahara.
Kanda Mula Phala Hara.
Kanda Mula Phalahara.
Suksha Parnashana Kavit.
Shuksha Parnashana Kvachit.
Suksha Parnashana Kvachit.
Shuksha Parnashana Kvachit.
Abhaksha Katichit Akshan.
Abhaksha Katichit Pakshan.
Abhaksha Katichit Akshan.
Abhaksha Katichit Pakshan.
Vayu Bakshas Tataparam.
Vayu Bakshas Tataparam.
Vayu Bakshas Tataparam.
Vayu Bakshas Tataparam.
Kanda Mula Phala Phalahara.
Kanda Mula Phalahara.
Shuksha Parnashana Kvachit.
Shuksha Parnashana Kvachit.
Abhaksha Katichit Akshan.
Abhaksha Katichit Pakshan.
Vayu Bakshas Tataparam.
Vayu Bakshas Tataparam.
Kanda Mula Phalahara.
Kanda Mula Phalahara.
Shuksha Parnashana Kvachit.
Shuksha Parnashana Kvachit.
Abhaksha Katichit Pakshan.
Abhaksha Katichit Pakshan.
Vayu Bakshas Tataparam.
Vayu Bakshas Tataparam.
Kanda Mula Phalahara.
Kanda Mula Phalahara.
Shuksha Paranashana Kvachit.
Shuksha Parnashana Kvachit.
Abhaksha Katichit Pakshan.
Abhaksha Katichit Pakshan.
Vayu Bakshas Tataparam.
Vayu Bakshas Tataparam.
Kanda Mula Phalahara.
Kanda Mula Phalahara.
Shuksha Paranashana Kvachit.
Shuksha Parnashana Kvachit.
Abhaksha Katichit Pakshan.
Abhaksha Katichit Pakshan.
Vayu Bakshas Tataparam.
Vayu Bakshas Tataparam.
Kandamula Phalahara.
Kanda Mula Phalahara.
Shuksha Parnashana Kvachit.
Shuksha Parnashana Kvachit.
Abhaksha Katichit Paksha.
Abhaksha Katichit Pakshan.
Vayu Bakshas Tataparam.
Vayu Bakshas Tataparam.
Kandamula Phalahara.
Kanda Mula Phalahara.
Suksha Parnashana Kvachit.
Shuksha Parnashana Kvachit.
Abhaksha Katichit Pakshan.
Abhaksha Katichit Pakshan.
Vayu Bakshas Tataparam.
Vayu Bakshas Tataparam.
Kanda
Kanda.
Trunk.
Trunk.
Mula
Mula.
Roots.
Roots.
Phala
Phala.
Fruits.
Fruits.
Ahara
Ahara.
Eating.
Eating.
Shuksha
Shuksha.
Dry.
Dry.
Parna
Parna.
leaves.
Leaves.
Ashana
Ashana.
eating.
Eating.
Kvachit
Kvachit.
sometimes.
Sometimes.
Abhaksha
Abhaksha.
drinking water.
Drinking water.
Katichit
Katichit.
for several.
Several.
Pakshan
Pakshan.
fortnights.
Fortnights.
Vayu
Vayu.
the air.
The air.
Baksha
Baksha.
breathing.
Breathing.
Tataparam
Tataparam.
thereafter.
Thereafter.
Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. In the Tapovan, Maharaj Prithu sometimes ate the trunks and roots of trees, and sometimes he ate fruit and dried leaves. And for some weeks he drank only water. Finally, he lived simply by breathing air. Translation. In Bhagavad Gita, yogis are advised to go to the secluded place in the forest and live alone in a sanctified spot there. By Prithu Maharaj's behavior, we can understand that when he went to the forest, he did not eat any cooked food sent from the city by some devotees or disciples. As soon as one takes a vow to live in a forest, he must simply eat roots, tree trunks, fruits, dry leaves, or whatever nature provides in that way. Prithu Maharaj strictly adopted these principles for living in the forest, and sometimes he ate nothing but dry leaves and drank nothing but a little water. Sometimes he lived on nothing but air, and sometimes he ate some fruit from the trees. In this way he lived in the forest and underwent severe austerity, especially in regards to eating. In other words, overeating is not at all recommended for one who wants to progress in spiritual life. Sri Rupa Goswami also warns that too much eating and too much endeavor, atyahara prayascha, are against the principles by which one can advance in spiritual life. It is also notable that according to Vedic injunction, to live in the forest is to live in a mode of complete goodness, whereas to live in the city is to live in a mode of passion, and to live in a brothel or drinking house is to live in a mode of ignorance. However, to live in a temple is to live in Vaikuntha, which is transcendental to all the modes of material nature. This Krishna conscious movement affords one the opportunity to live in the temple of the Lord, which is as good as Vaikuntha. Consequently, a Krishna conscious person does not need to go to the forest and artificially try to imitate Maharaj Prithu or the great sages and munis who used to live in the forest. Srila Rupa Goswami, after retiring from his minister's seat in the government, went to Vrindavan and lived beneath a tree like Maharaj Prithu. Since then, many people have gone to Vrindavan to imitate Rupa Goswami's behavior. Instead of advancing in spiritual life, many have fallen into the material habits and even in Vrindavan have become victims of illicit sex, gambling and intoxication. The Krishna conscious movement has been introduced in the Western countries, but it is not possible for Westerners to go to the forest and practice the severe austerities, which were ideally practiced by Prithu Maharaj or Rupa Goswami. However, Westerners or anyone else can follow in the footsteps of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur by living in a temple, who is transcendental to residence in a forest, and who vow that to accept Krishna Prasad and nothing else, follow the regulative principles, chant 16 rounds daily of the Hare Krishna mantra. This way, one's spiritual life will never be disturbed. Hare Krishna. Close the door. Omajnanatimirandasya
Yanjana Shalakaya Chakshurudamitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha
Shri Chaitanya
Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadapitam Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyev Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha
Jai Sri Krishna
Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta-vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Bhaktam 4.23.5. In the Tapovan, Maharaj Prithu sometimes ate the trunks and roots of trees, and sometimes he ate fruit and dry leaves, and for some weeks he drank only water. Finally, he lived simply by breathing air. Hare Krishna. So, here we find descriptions of Maharaj Prithu performing severe austerities in the forest, and in this way, this is a description of the Vanaprastha ashram. We spoke yesterday about it, how Vanaprastha ashram is meant to detach oneself from the sense gratification, which otherwise is very prominent, especially in the Grihastha ashram. And we also spoke about, yesterday we heard about sense gratification and how this is, needs to be given up at some point. Just looking here for a shloka, 1 second. So in Rishabhdev teachings we find this interesting shloka. I was thinking yesterday to maybe mention, but I thought, okay, let's mention it now, about sense gratification. This is 554. Nunam pramata kurute karma yad indriya prittaya pranati nasadu manye yata atmanoyam asana pikleshada ashatiha. Prabhupada gives a very extensive translation to this shloka. It says, when a person considers sense gratification the aim of life, he certainly becomes mad after materialistic living and engages in all kind of sinful activity. He does not know that due to his past misdeeds, he has already received a body which, although temporary, is the cause of his misery. Actually, the living entity should not have taken any material body, but he has been awarded the material body for sense gratification. Therefore, I think it not befitting an intelligent man to involve himself again in the activities of sense gratification, by which he perpetually gets material bodies one after another. That's a powerful, powerful shloka, describing the problem with sense gratification. Here it says that actually the living entity should not have taken a material body in the first place. That's what Prabhupada says, we should make the best out of a bad bargain. We do a bad business, and then what's the bad business? Well, the fact that we are here, the fact that we turn away from Krishna, the fact that we got a material body, that's a sign of our ignorance, that we did something wrong. So, okay, now we are here, we got this material body, so let's do the best out of it. But why did we got this material body in the first place? Because we wanted to enjoy independently from Krishna. And that's why the body is a facility to enjoy. And because of that desire to enjoy, we got this body. But actually the problem is the body is full of misery. And we try to enjoy, and for that we get the body, but the body gives us so much pain. And then we want to engage again. We already got this body, which is a source of misery, but then we still continue to engage more in sense gratification. And what is the result? We get more suffering, and we get more bodies to continue our suffering, trying to find happiness. And it says here, Nunam pramata kurute. Pramata means mad. One who gets involved in sense gratification, he becomes mad after sense gratification, and he doesn't care whether karma, vikarma. He's just engaging in all kind of sinful activities, just somehow or to gratify his senses, because he has become mad after that kind of enjoyment. And that's the condition of the soul in this world. So that's why nasadu manye yata atmanoyam. Therefore, I think it is not befitting an intelligent man to involve himself again in the activities of sense gratification. A sadhu means a sober man. Here it says sadhu, it's not good. The word is meant in this way. It's not befitting for an intelligent person to again engage in sense gratification. So, of course, some degree of sense gratification is required. It's quite natural. As long as we are in a material body, we need some sense gratification. And we have spoken about this also many times. It's that Prabhupada explains, like salt, with a nice dish, there, and then sometimes the cook put too much salt, and then you can't eat it. And sometimes there is too less salt, and then everyone is complaining, and hey, give me salt, and you adjust. So it requires just the right amount of salt, and then that's nice. So similarly, yes, we need sense gratification, but it should be the right amount. Not too much, not too little. Just so that we can keep our body and soul together and do our business and feel somehow satisfied. But not more than that. And of course that's quite individual. Some people, they need more salt in their meal, or they need more sense gratification than others. And therefore we have the Varnashram. If for those who want to have a little more salt, usually then there is a Grihastashram. You have more facilities to live a comfortable life, and that's quite normal. It's basically for most of us. That's the normal. You go through some training, and then you enter the Grihastashram. Then you get some freedom, some independence, and you can live your life according to your own ideas, and you have some facility for sense gratification. And for those who kind of are able to just continue and they may stay in the Brahmacharya ashram also. But usually most devotees go to the Grihastha ashram. But then at some point, and Prabhupada usually speaks about at the age of 50, one should also give up that and become more serious in spiritual life, or kind of try to slowly detach oneself from sense gratification completely and reduce and become more austere. And that's described here in this chapter. Of course, we can understand Prithu Maharaj was a king, so he lived a very opulent life. Of course, he's fully, he's Shakti Vijayavatar, but still he also showed by his own example how to detach himself, and here we find some description of his Vanaprasthi lifestyle. And as we heard yesterday, it is quite severe austerities to go in forest, and then trunks and roots and leaves, and fruits is the most opulent here, right? From time to time you get some fruit. Like, if there is some Ekadashi, today I just take fruits, and we just take fruits, and we feel like, I ate these fruits, but I need grain, I know. No, we feel like eating fruit is like eating nothing. But here, that's kind of the most opulent, is like some fruits, otherwise just some dry leaves. How much your appetite will be, satisfied with some dry leaves. So that's very austere. But Prabhupada emphasizes the point, in other words, overeating is not at all recommended for one who wants to progress in spiritual life. So he went to the forest, underwent severe austerity, especially in regards to eating. It's interesting, especially eating. Yes, in Grihastha ashram you eat nicely? No, usually. Prabhupada also describes that the husband, the man looks for a woman who can gratify the tongue and the genitals. So it's a very strong desire to have sexual intercourse and to eat nice food. So in here it says overeating is not recommended for one who wants to make progress in spiritual life. Of course, therefore we have our famous prayer by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Sharira Vidyaja Shadendriya Taika Shivet Vivek Vishashakare. O Lord, these material bodies are a lump of ignorance, and the senses are a network of paths leading to death. Somehow or other we have fallen into the ocean of material sense enjoyment, and of all the senses the tongue is the most voracious and uncontrollable. It is very difficult to conquer the tongue in this world, but you, dear Krishna, are very kind to us. You have sent this nice prasadam to help us conquer the tongue. So, it's a very interesting prayer, like sometimes we have these interfaith dialogues, and then, oh, you also have a prayer before eating? Yeah, we have also prayer. It goes like this. Wow. It's quite straightforward. So the tongue is very ferocious. It's the most difficult sense to control. That's why we are very fortunate that Krishna had manifested Prasadam, the glories of Prasadam, and it's an interesting statement here. Prabhupada says, Prasad in the Western countries means a full meal. Well, sometimes we say, this guest can take a little Prasad. Prabhupada says, Prasad in the West country means a full meal. From the very beginning, even when I was alone, I was cooking for at least 1,000 men, and I distributed full meals. According to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy, Prasad should be taken up to the neck. Akanta. Akanta. Akanta means neck. Prabhupada quotes Akanta. Should take him up to the neck. In Jagannath Puri, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's only occupation was holding Sankirtan at least 4 hours every day and distributing prasadam to the devotees. It is stated in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that the Lord was so liberal that he would give every man prasadam sufficient for being eaten by 2 or 3 men. So we are trying to follow it by distributing prasadam very liberally, and we invite everyone without any discrimination. Everywhere we go, have got temples, we distribute prasad, especially to the poor men. And of course, Prabhupada in another statement refers what poor man means. He says, a sannyasi should worship the deity in the temple and feed the poor. Poor does not mean only one who has no leg or no ears. Everyone who is spiritually poor should be given prasadam. No leg, no ears. In India, you see sometimes these crippled, beggars, very unfortunate. They're missing some limb of their body, and they're begging. Prabhupada says, not only this poor, everyone who is spiritually poor, they should be given prasadam, and they should be given prasadam up to the neck. So there's an interesting letter also. I don't know if the Dhamma Prasad will like that letter. To all his contemporary presidents. It's a famous one.
Puri Sabji letter.
Yeah, Puri Sabji letter. Anyway, I'm not going through the whole thing, but maybe Prabhupada says it, okay, I read part of it. Now you must arrange in each temple there must be sufficient stock of prasad for distribution. You can keep first-class cooks, 2 or 3, and they should always be engaged. Whenever any guest comes, he must get prasad. This arrangement must be made, that the cook prepare 10-20 servings at a time of puris and sabji, to which you can also add a halava and pakora. The dishes must be supplied immediately. Whenever a gentleman comes, he must be served. And it's going on, and when it's finished, you just cook more. And the same principle, prasadam in the West means full meal. Feed them with prasadam. So Prabhupada had such faith in prasadam, and he knew that, what can we do with these Western people? Give them kirtan, give them prasadam, that's the only hope. Okay, that's one part, but then but here it says, overeating is a great obstacle on spiritual life. Prabhupada says, let's feed them. Okay, so the point is that, of course, feeding in the beginning, and then one should learn to control. That's the principle. And Prabhupada says, prasad should be taken with the faith that is not material. It cannot be materially infected. It is called prasad seva, not prasad enjoyment. Seva means giving service. Prasad is as good as Krishna, therefore prasad should be respected as good as Krishna. As soon one gets prasad, immediately one should touch it to the head, because it is Krishna, it's absolute. In this way we have to be trained up, as is described in the Shastra. So, yes, we should eat up to the neck, but you should also understand that's the beginning, and then at some point you should learn to honor prasad nicely. there's this amazing statement from the Skanda Purana. One who makes a sincere resolve that I shall not eat anything except the remnants of Lord Jagannath and follows it every day, such a pure-hearted person is absolved of all sins and undoubtedly attained the topmost Vaishnava destination, just by making the vow to only take prasadam. Even if it is stale, the prasadam, or brought from a far away place, it is all right to consume it, and it leads to the destruction of all sins. Even if it has fallen from the mouth of a dog, a Brahmin should consume Mahaprasad. So what to speak of others? There's like two most extreme, like food that falls out of the mouth of a dog, it's the most, abominable, and then the Brahman is the most highest, but even the most highest, the Brahmana would accept prasad that falls from the mouth of a dog. Because prasad is always pure. That's the statement of the Skanda Purana. Okay, so from this you can understand we should appreciate prasadam. But, now comes the but. If we can practicing accepting only remnants of food offered to Krishna, it is possible to get free from Maya's victimization. Vegetable, grain, fruit, milk products and water are proper foods to offer to Lord Krishna. However, if one accepts prasadam only because of its palatable taste and thus eats too much, he also falls prey to trying to satisfy the demands of the tongue. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught us to avoid very palatable dishes even while eating prasadam. If we offer palatable dishes to the deity with the intention of eating such nice food, we are involved in trying to satisfy the demands of the tongue. If we accept the invitation of a rich man with the idea of receiving palatable food, we are also trying to satisfy the demands of the tongue. There's a house program! Wow, yes, let's go there. There will be all these kind of dishes. Let's go there. So the main motivation to go to the house program is to satisfy the tongue. So I guess maybe we have experienced that. So, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that shouldn't be done. Jivara lala seyehi iti uttidaya Srishnodara parayana Krishna naipaya. That person who runs here and there seeking to gratify his palate and who is always attached to the desires of his stomach and genitals is unable to attain Krishna. These are instructions to Raghunath Das Goswami. Do not dress luxuriously and do not eat delicious foodstuffs. Until Lila 6. So even prasadam, one should not eat too opulent, and even prasadam one shouldn't overeat too much. And at latest in a Vanaprastha ashram we should learn that. Okay? Of course, the sooner the better. But as is described here, when one goes to the forest or when one takes to the Vanaprastha ashram, that's one of the main things that one learns to give up opulent eating and starts to live very simply. Okay, so then Prabhupada speaks about going, that Vanaprastha means going to the forest, but then Prabhupada explains it actually means to live in complete goodness. That's the idea. Because usually you live in a city, and a city is a place full of passion. And there's so much activities, and then you go for shopping, and then you go, go here and there, this place, so it's always full of passion. And then Vanaprastha ashram means you go to a place of goodness, complete goodness, and that's why forest is good for that. Because what do you find in the forest? Nothing. So that's why it's goodness. It's kind of very natural. And it's interesting that Prabhupada also speaks about this in the 7th canto, in his purport to text 755. Shri Prabhupada Uvacha Tatsadu Mange Suravada Dehinam Sada Samudviknadya Satkara Grahat Itvatma Katam Griham Anukupam Madam Kato Yantarim Ashalita. We learned this shloka 2 weeks ago, but so what have you learned? Prahlad says, O best of the Asuras, king of the demons, as far as I have learned from my spiritual master, any person who has accepted a temporary body and temporary household life is certainly embarrassed by anxiety because of having fallen in a dark well where there is no water but only suffering. One should give up this position and go to the forest. Vana. And it's interesting how Prabhupada sometimes in his translation gives more elaborated explanation. Usually you have the purpose, the tika, you give explanation. But sometimes Prabhupada involving into the translation his own purport also. Which some commentators or some scholars maybe kind of criticize. But the word says like this, but Prabhupada translates like that. All that's translated with bhakti, with rasa, full of realizations. So Prabhupada says one should give up this position and go to the forest, Vana. More clearly one should go to Vrindavan, where only Krishna consciousness is prevalent, and should thus take shelter of the Supreme Personality of God. So when we speak of forest, we spoke about that yesterday also, then it means to go to Vrindavan. Should all go to Vrindavan. And in the purport, Prabhupada says, Prahlad recommended to his father that accepting vanaprastha life would be better than going deeper and deeper into griham andakupam, the blind well of life as a grihastha. In our Krishna conscious movement, we therefore invite all the elderly persons of the world to come to Vrindavan and stay there in retired life, making advancement in spiritual consciousness, Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada is inviting all the elderly person from all over the world to go to Vrindavan. Okay, what means elderly? I guess you have to have some white hair or something. And then you go to Vrindavan and you just absorb. So that's vanaprastha. You go to the holy place. But then, in the next paragraph, Prabhupada says, no, Rupa Goswami went to Vrindavan, and many people also go to Vrindavan, they imitate Rupa Goswami. And actually they fall down, and they just, they are in the holy place, they try to maybe, become renounced, but actually in their mind they're just thinking of sense gratification, and then they even eventually also do it even in the holy place. And in the next life they become monkeys. So, and what is the solution? Prabhupada says, therefore, Westerners or anyone else can follow in the footsteps of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur by living in a temple which is transcendental to the residence in the forest, and to vow to accept Krishna Prasad and nothing else, follow the regulative principles and chant 16 rounds daily of the Hare Krishna mantra. In this way one's spiritual life will never be disturbed. So Prabhupada basically says that yes, Vana, the forest, is goodness, but of course Vrindavan is transcendental, but Vrindavan is very difficult. Jai Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Jai, it's difficult to be in Vrindavan. But then that's why we have established temples all over the world, and we invite the devotees to stay at these temples. And these temples are even better than the forest because the temples are transcendental. And that's also vanaprastha, that of course you can stay in the temple as a brahmachari for your whole life, but then at least at the end of the life you also can come and stay in the temple. And temple life is Vaikuntha, described here. It's interesting, this morning I just heard a lecture by Swami Bhagavan Keshav Maharaj, and he gives the example that he tells a story how Bhaktisiddhanta on a lecture he said that my Guru Maharaj Gorky Das Babaji gave me 3 instructions. Don't accept disciples, never associate with non-devotees, never go to Kolkata, because that's the capital of Maya. So then everyone was like, okay. But Bhaktisiddhanta, he accepted many disciples. He mingled with so many British people and preached to everyone. And he established the big temple in Kolkata. In order to establish a temple, you have to go to Kolkata. So how is it? Then Bhaktisiddhanta explained, well, okay, I accepted disciples, but when I see how enthusiastically my disciples are engaged in devotional service, I feel so encouraged in my own spiritual life. Therefore, I see them as my gurus. Therefore, I've never accepted many disciples, because they are my gurus. And when it comes to association means that you take something, you share your heart and you take something from them, association. But I have mixed with many people, but I've never taken, I always have just given. So I have not associated with them. And when it comes to living in Calcutta, yes, I went to Calcutta, but I always stayed with the Vaishnavas. And wherever there are Vaishnavas, that's Vaikuntha. That's why I never lived in Calcutta. I always lived in Vaikuntha. So in this way, I followed the instruction of my Guru Maharaj always. Very nice point. Point is that Bhaktisiddhanta and Gorky Das Babaji, they were so completely different. Gorky Das Babaji was fully absorbed in bhajan, and he never wanted to be seen, and he didn't want to mix with people. No, basically he made a statement that I can tolerate the bad smell of urine and stool, I can tolerate it, but I cannot tolerate the bad smell of all the material desires and of all these materialistic people who come and ask for blessings. So he was completely a Bhajananandi, and Bhaktisiddhanta was completely the opposite. He was going into, of course he also did 9 years of serious bhajan, which is amazing, like from the age of 31 to the age of 40, for 9 years he chanted every day 192 rounds, like just chanting. Can you imagine 9 years chanting? And we go for a japa retreat for 3 days, 4 to 7 days, and we feel like the mind is like, wow, that was intense. And he's doing that for 9 years, from 31 to 31 to 40, like 9 years, it's amazing. Anyhow, but the point is, he went to Kolkata, but he never lived in the capital of Maya, because he always associated with the Vaishnavas, and that's why he lived in Vaikuntha. So we are very fortunate, because we are living in the temple, which means that we're living in Vaikuntha. And even if we live outside, we can create Vaikuntha by establishing a temple in our home, associating with devotees in this way, or always living in a transcendental plane. Hare Krishna. Do you have any comments or questions to this point?
Anyway, to the topic of prasad, just recently I had a huge discussion with a devotee about prasad, and he was saying, prasad is too tasty in this temple. It's too tasty, and people devotees eat too much and they get lazy. And so his conclusion was, we have to make prasad which is not tasty. Then the devotees will eat less. And
that's the end of the topic. I don't know what to do.
yeah, so I didn't agree with that. Maybe you want to also say something.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, I guess that's the other extreme, right? In some way, we must admit that we have very opulent and very delicious prasadam every day. That's true. On the other side, if you say now we have to purposefully cook prasad that's not tasty, I mean, that's crazy also. That's the other extreme. Of course, if we see in many temples, like in India, in bigger temples, usually what they have is they have the deity kitchen and they have the general prasad. And that's there for a reason, right? Because deity kitchen means you really cook, as opulent as you can. And everywhere is full of ghee, it's everywhere full of spices and very opulent prasad. And that you give to Krishna. And then you have a general kitchen, which is it's tasty, but it's healthy. And of course, that also it's emphasis. It should be tasty. They also should be satisfied. But it's simple. Yeah. So now here, obviously, we don't have such facilities like so many devotees. So it is just practical to have one kitchen and cook for the deities and the devotees. So we have to balance that a bit. So we want to please Krishna. We have Lord Jagannath on the altar. Naturally, we cook opulent, nice prasad for him. And then whatever Lord Jagannath leaves as his remnants, and we accept gladly. That's prasad. But then, like there's so many guests coming every day. There's so many, we don't have so much leftovers usually, like prasad is distributed. So then it's up to the individual also to learn to control the senses. That like if there's 9 different preparations for lunch, you don't have to take from all of them. You can decide. You can purposely I want to eat more simple, and then I take just rice and one sabji, and I take some salad, and I'm fine. And to blame the cooks or the authorities that it's too opulent prasad, well, you learn to control your tongue. That's the whole idea. I mean, that would be my response to that.
There was a similar instance, maybe, in regards to the ladies. There was actually some brahmachari sannyasis complaining to Prabhupada that ladies shouldn't be in a temple or something.
Too many beautiful ladies in the temple.
Yeah, they
should only accept.
They shouldn't come for morning program. I don't remember what was the.
Don't cook too opulent. Don't have too beautiful ladies.
Yeah.
Simple prasadam and only not so beautiful ladies.
And then, Prabhupada was mentioning. I think that was a lady talking to Prabhupada. Prabhupada said, "Yeah, they should go to forest."
Yeah, that's a famous discussion. Yeah, some brahmacharis complain that it's too hard, it's too difficult. Why do we have ladies in the ashram? It's like, yeah, and it's interesting that Prabhupada's respond. The ladies stay in ashram. That's our arrangement. If you can't tolerate it, go to the forest. If you don't like it, go to the forest. So Prabhupada took a very strong point, he protected his spiritual daughters, and because that was very important to Prabhupada. Because he knew the success in preaching in the West. One of the key points of success is to include the ladies, give them the same rights, give them the same possibilities. It was one of the key points of Prabhupada's success. That's how he felt and how it was proven also. So that's why he wanted to give the ladies the same chances. Yeah. It's an interesting comparison to the prasad. Yeah, different forms of temptations, which we need to become mature and learn to deal with it.
Who's responsible?
Yeah. Of course, there at the same time, when we say that the temple is Vaikuntha, but then temple is like Vaikuntha, it's transcendental, and then we can perform like the Vanaprastha, like forest, we can live there. But in the forest there is austerities. So in the temple are also austerities. What are the austerities of the temple?
Not overeating.
Not overeating. Get up early in the morning, and also to cooperate and tolerate amongst each other. That's the austerity in ashram. That's the main austerity. Tolerate, because there's so many different individuals. You may not get along with each other, and somehow you just have to tolerate and cooperate. And that's the main austerity within the temple. And it's not so easy. yeah, if you want to live in a temple, that's what you need to learn. And that's, of course, it's amongst the general, but also in regards to the gender. Somehow we have to learn to deal with it. Of course, at the same time, also we may have to make some arrangements, like in the sense of, yeah, there's a reason why we have men sit on this side, ladies on that side. There's a reason for that.
And the dress code.
Dress code, like there's a reason for all of these things also. Yeah.
I was just reminded of this one time Prabhupada said that he quoted a Bengali phrase saying "Pete khele pite boy," which means that if you eat nicely, give service nicely. So that's the whole point, that when you're being fed nicely, that means you give service also very nicely. So the devotees who eat nicely, they should remember, I'm eating nicely so much, then I should give service also very nicely. That's one thing. And also I just wanted to share this fact of taking prasad, and I was just comparing it to also deity worship and our relationship with the deities. And it is said that Krishna is manifested in the deity as much as we see him. If we see Krishna in the deity, then yes, Krishna is there. And as soon as we just treat the deity as stone, it is stone, that's how it is. And similarly also with prasad. Like sometimes prasadam time becomes meat and greed, but if we really, with every morsel we take, we are conscious that it's actually Krishna, then it will have an effect. And if we treat it as food, then of course we will become lethargic and all of that will come. So although controlling the eating is so important and individuals may have issues with the fact there is opulent prasad, but if we are conscious to not exploit prasadam or not exploit food, but actually realize consciously that you are honoring prasad, which is not different from Krishna. And I also saw actually in my life itself, because my mother was much more serious than my father in Krishna consciousness. And with my father I saw the effect of prasad. That's all he did sincerely, just and it was so powerful actually, and it changed so much for him. So it is powerful as long as we realize that it's Krishna.
Very nice point. And I think it applies to all this different way the Lord appears in this world. Krishna is so merciful, and Krishna appears in the form of the Vajravigraha. Krishna appears in the form of like sadhus who help us. Krishna appears in the form of prasadam. Krishna appears in the form of the holy name. But it's always the matter of how much do we realize what's the holy name, how much do we realize that the holy name is actually not different from Krishna. And also living in a temple, how much do we realize that we are in Vaikuntha? It's amazing, we get a chance to live in Vaikuntha. But yeah, I think it's nice meditation, and also nice meditation in regards to how to appreciate temple life. We're so fortunate to be here and to appreciate this lifestyle. Okay, I think that we end here. Thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Jai. Shri Prabhupada
Jai. Hari Bo. Krishna Premarupa Dasa.
Jai. Gaur Bhakti. Everyone is following so faithfully the instruction of the temple president.
See how we are so nicely, dynamically performing this morning program. Gestern, gell?
Ja, jetzt schon, ja.
Nein, heute morgen haben wir ein Meeting mit allen Schweizer-Köchen. Actually, vielleicht ist es gut, wenn du ankommst, weil wir würden überlegen, dass wir eingeladen dann jetzt. Nein? Ja, kannst du gut so schnell. Ja, ist es so. Wird schon wieder, weißt du? Du kannst ja wie ein Zoom, wie ich. Spaß. Patrz, jak to, że... A spłaszcza, nie wiem, że...